Where do you think new answers will emerge out of in the world? Like answers to the past. What areas of the world do you think they would emerge most likely from?
Well, I know that the best technology we have in archaeology right now for determining answers is coming from Lidar surveys. So the region of the world that has the best untapped discoveries is different from the region that can give us the best discoveries, right? Those are two different things. Because in
Wait.
one part of the
Go.
world, like so for
What is it?
example,
What about that again?
so if we use ground penetrating radar in, if we use LIDAR in the Amazon or
Mhm.
all over the world, if we're able to do LIDAR maps of the entire globe, then we'll be able to determine and find lost cities everywhere we look, pretty much. Because LIDAR is perfect for finding, human manufactured uh, remains of structures in heavily wooded or even sand dune rich environments. But the place where we can find the most spectacular artifacts is not necessarily in the cities we find doing LIDAR surveys. It's in what I think should be a huge international push, and that's in the permafrost, which is rapidly melting. And the permafrost holds, preserved humans. It has preserved art tools. It has preserved mammoths. It's got preserved cave bears. It's got a almost pristine record of the entire ice age within its boundaries. And part of the methane that we're seeing released into the Earth's atmosphere from the decay of the permafrost is a result of these biological material decaying. And I can't help but imagine that a lot of that material in the decaying permafrost is probably really invaluable artifacts that will never ever be seen again. So, we really should be doing LIDAR surveys of all the unexplored portions of Earth to determine where and when the extent of these massive population centers were. And then we should be expanding research in the tundras. What I'd like to see happen worldwide for really expanding archaeological resources is I'd like to see more countries institute cultural resource management laws like we have in the United States. So I'd like to see more countries that before you build a skyscraper or subway, they actually have people go out and try to preserve the material there. Because if we
Mhm.
had a global initiative to preserve cultural material and fossils in all developing countries and in all countries on the UN, for example, we'd be able to see archaeology completely skyrocket with the amount of usable data. And it would preserve so much because, in all of these cities that are rapidly, densifying and urbanizing, there's also layers and centuries of history underneath those cities that is oftentimes being completely destroyed. I mean, look at what Egypt's doing. They're building an entire another capital, and they
Mhm.
haven't had very much cultural resource management done in the area where they're building the capital, but they're building an entire other new Cairo.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have all of these examples going on across the world. So, if we invested in LIDAR surveys, and then if we invested in, looking in regions of the world where we might have non-renewable resources that are rapidly being destroyed in archaeological context, and then if we just actually looked at the way that we develop our cities and our infrastructure in general, and in ways that works with science as opposed to against it, I think we could really see massive changes. And the more we understand our past, the more answers that gives us into addressing the problems of the future. So, for me, I see it as a win-win.
What's the process of LIDAR and
Oh, so
what's
LiDAR,
its range of capabilities?
yeah. So what LiDAR does is it sends laser beams. You basically send a drone up into the air, and what it does is it conducts a survey over an entire plot of land. Basically, just flies all the way around, just filling up the entire parcel. And what it does is it sends these laser beams down that hit the surface of the ground, and then it sends that data back up. Essentially what that does is it makes all of the, it allows you to peel all the vegetation off of the surface and just look at the ground disturbances themselves. And oftentimes those ground disturbances represent archaeological features like terraces, cities, roads, and any number of important, infrastructures for indigenous communities. And so that technology allows us to pretty much strip an entire rainforest without cutting down an entire tree.
So it's for like big stuff, not like some arrowheads in the ground, right?
No, not necessarily. No. What we still have for arrowheads in the ground is the same methods we've always used, sending a field technician out there to go do a pedestrian survey. But who knows? Maybe we'll have a robot or a drone do it in the future, but I doubt it. I feel like that's more expensive than a tech.
Yeah. Huh. What's something coming up that you're looking forward to? Digging wise.
So I have a few projects going on right now. Until 2028, I'll be pretty busy with my current project. And so I'm not digging anything per se.
So you're thinking 5 years. You got 5 years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm the lead paleontologist for the LA Metro subway construction. So we have a long period of development before those subway tunnels are completed. So I'm not really looking at actually digging stuff out, but I'm looking at monitoring the construction of the excavation of these tunnels, and I'm anticipating finding lots of stuff. I wish I could say more about the stuff I've already found, but I'm contractually obligated and I can't. But yeah, so that's my current job. So I couldn't be more excited. I mean, for me,
that's so exciting. So the
tunnel,
things that you were mentioning before about, when you're developing, taking the time beforehand to see if there's any cultural significance or resources, just check it to make sure that's what you're doing in Los Angeles.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And I'm happy to say that California actually leads the world when it comes to preserving our fossil heritage and our archaeological heritage. So we actually work in direct communication with the tribes, developers, and the city. And we all work together to make sure that each project is done lawfully, respectfully, and is able to preserve as much as the data as possible. The city of Los Angeles and the state of California in general is really focused on preserving as much of our collective heritage as possible. Now, of course, sometimes it's part of the reason why housing's a little expensive here. We work under CEQA, which also has, negative repercussions. I do believe that CEQA does need to be ratified, but I think the cultural resource legislation in CEQA, as well as the paleontology resource legislation, in fact, if anything, paleontology needs to be stronger. Both of those are very strong. But yeah, I'm working under, CEQA in California. But CEQA is just under, that's the California Environmental Quality and Protection Act. And the rest of the United States is actually protected under one of Nixon's laws, believe it or not, under the Environmental Protection Act. And Section 106 preserves all artifacts across the country. Unfortunately, it does not preserve fossils. So, yeah, that is what I'm doing. I'm monitoring construction.